For millennia, sacred fires have flickered in hidden places, where ancient sages traced patterns in the sand and whispered secrets under the watchful gaze of stars. Among all relics, sought and lost, one manuscript has lingered as a spectral shadow in the collective imagination, a manuscript whose verses shimmer on the edge of memory, bridging prophecy and immediate reality. Known as the Manuscript of Kalki, this Sanskrit text radiates the urgency of a dream that refuses to fade. Scribed by visionary rishis who claimed direct communion with Vishnu during their ecstatic meditations, the book describes the pulse of time through cosmic cycles, or Yugas, culminating in a present age thick with contradictions and transformative potential. The manuscript's vision of time bends the mind. Instead of a straight line, existence spirals through vast eras. Luminous beginnings infused with virtue and unity gradually give way to ages burdened by shadow, silence, and forgetting. Each yuga colors humanity's perception, shaping how people express purpose, chase pleasure, and build or break the bonds that unite. The Satya Yuga speaks of pure dharma, wherein harmony flows between heart, nature, and the sacred. Through Treta and Dvapara, a slow erosion creeps in. Values slip away almost imperceptibly, like water draining from a cracked vessel. By the time Kali Yuga dawns, its weight settles deep in bone and spirit alike. A gravity that presses humanity farther from remembrance. Color seeps out of custom, and ritual becomes hollow echo. Where elders once kept wisdom alive in the flicker of story and gesture, the old paths dissolve into the noise of constant distraction. The manuscript lingers over the symptoms. Virtue dissolves until it seems an anomaly. The impulse for spiritual practice yields ground to the demands of fleeting excitement. Genuine connection surrenders to a frenzied search for validation and approval. Cycles of consuming and discarding that accelerate rather than satisfy. Communities, once woven together by ceremony and kinship, drift into islands of solitude, each soul grasping for a sense of mattering just beyond its reach. When turning from parchment to present moment, echoes resound everywhere. Screens light up faces in midnight rooms. Hunger for attention eclipses the yearning for real witness. Statistics track the upward curve. Hours spent scrolling. Dopamine spikes from yet another like. Brands promising happiness if only you buy, upgrade, subscribe. Loneliness tightens its grip. All of this the manuscript foresaw with a clarity that chills. In an age where the world is a marketplace for sensation, the search for purpose becomes a frantic race against emptiness. Another rift wounds the fabric of this epoch, the slow vanishing of truth. The manuscript outlines a terrain where truth grows faint, often unrecognizable amid labyrinths of stories spun for comfort or control. Words, once carriers of insight, become weapons. Misinformation swirls through networks, fragmenting perspectives and deepening separation. Sensational headlines rise and fall in rapid succession, pulling attention this way and that, pushing toward outrage, bias, or numb surrender. For every seeker yearning for clarity, 1,000 distractions muddy the waters. In such an environment, discernment smolders as the final act of rebellion. A return to the silent center when noise consumes all else. The manuscript moves further, describing wars that churn ceaselessly, conflict as a fever that spreads from borders and battlefields into the very psyche of individuals. When divisions harden and tempers flare, the outer world mirrors the restlessness within. News feeds become chronicles of crisis and collision, maps of a planet divided against itself. Yet, beneath the fatalism the text senses a hidden invitation. It asks, amid conflict, is there a deeper peace that calls to be uncovered and lived? In every line, a paradox flickers. The same manuscript that catalogues decline, spiral, and loss also gestures toward a breakthrough woven into the unraveling itself. The ancient rishis knew that every shadow cast by the Yugas grows longest just before the return of the light. Through the haze of Kali Yuga, a signal pulses. The narrative, though relentless, is never closed, for there remain mysteries yearning to be reclaimed and futures shimmering just beyond the veil of habitual thought. As the prophecies unfold, the Manuscript of Kalki shifts focus to the wounded earth. The text conjures images of rivers darkened by neglect, forests reduced to memory, lands parched and air heavy with invisible poisons. The sages poured into their verses a warning. When humanity forgets its sacred bond with the living world, the land's vitality spirals into crisis. Skies cloud, waters stagnate, animals vanish quietly from the edges of perception. Each broken ecosystem becomes a mirror for the interior disarray gripping society. Environmental collapse, in the manuscript's vision, is never isolated from spiritual crisis. As physical balance unravels, so does collective peace. The two always entwined, like breath and heartbeat. Scrolls covered in Sanskrit speak of drought, famine, and storms gathering. Yet, these words read less as invocations of doom than as descriptions of a profound spiritual amnesia. Attempts to dominate or exploit the environment are traced to a deeper forgetting. The loss of wonder at the world's intricate harmony, the substitution of calculation for reverence. Progress, without remembrance of the sacred, churns out temporary abundance at the cost of future generations. Plastic islands drift on the oceans, ancient trees fall in silence, and the manuscript's prophecy finds echo in every crisis headline. Wealth, too, distills along fault lines the ancient seers named long ago. In verse after verse, the manuscript portrays a society where abundance solidifies in the hands of a chosen few, while poverty and want multiply at the margins. Towers of opulence cast lengthening shadows over communities stripped of dignity. Greed grows systemic, embedding itself in laws and customs, while compassion thins to a rare current. Power flows toward those who hoard rather than share. Injustice seeps into daily transactions, eroding the spirit that binds people together. The manuscript's vision sees not simply economic imbalance, but the corrosive power of forgetting the interconnectedness of all beings. When generosity wilts, the root system of humanity dries and cracks. Bond after bond withers as Kali Yuga deepens. The family, narrative says, becomes vulnerable to fragmentation. Distance grows between parent and child, sibling and sibling, elder and youth. Ancient ceremonies fall away, replaced by subtle isolations. Communities that once flourished on shared festivals and support become collections of strangers passing on illuminated sidewalks, eyes averted, spirits unmoored. Even in urban density, loneliness seeds itself in hearts. Algorithms measure engagement, but ancient ways of belonging slip quietly from memory. This vision of isolation surfaces in modern life with a kind of relentless irony. The world has grown wired, yet the soul craves touch, presence, and continuity. Social networks promise perpetual connection, yet often deliver distraction and fatigue. Divorce rates creep, neighbors become anonymous figures, and communities struggle to coalesce. The manuscript's distant warnings reveal themselves in the sighs of workers ending another day with no story to carry home, in the silence that fills apartment walls, and in the restless longing that drives people to search and scroll with no real arrival. The chase for pleasure surfaces as another thread woven through the ancient prophecy. The manuscript describes a world lulled into trance by the pursuit of immediate sensation. Attention drifts from the depths to the surface, hungry for novelty, quick escape, and heightened stimulation. Streaming marathons replace fireside tale-telling, the flicker of the new eclipses the wisdom of old. Each distraction promises relief, but soon fades, feeding a cycle that leaves the spirit less content, more restless. The soul's vast landscapes shrink to the size of a flickering screen, and long-form joy withers into the habit of chasing a new thrill. The manuscript remains unflinching. It names this hunger for the ephemeral as a misdirected search for the divine. Beneath every craving stirs the longing for union, mystery, and meaning. Yet without guidance, the search loops endlessly upon itself, burning energy that, once harnessed, could illuminate worlds. The challenge, then, is to recover wisdom that points inward, to rediscover the ceremonies and silences that nurture what is perennial rather than what flickers momentarily and fades. In revealing the pain and turbulence of modern existence, the manuscript beckons the listener toward something forgotten, but never lost, the deep memory of cosmic belonging. Every passage contains not an accusation, but a reminder that the storm outside finds its echo within. When the stories we live by collapse, the possibility of remembering returns, inviting humanity to listen for the pulse beneath the noise, the sacred rhythm that endures beyond the cycles of loss. Throughout its winding verses, the Manuscript of Kalki focuses a steady gaze on the crisis of leadership and the dissolution of wisdom traditions. Ancient voices carry a solemn warning about a future where those entrusted with guidance become entangled in personal ambition and forget the sacred charge they once upheld. Leadership, once rooted in vision and humility, succumbs to machinations and short-term gain. The manuscript pictures a climate where decisions echo not the collective good, but private urges dressed up in the language of progress. Whenever a leader's heart becomes heavy with self-interest, the connection to cosmic order slackens and confusion gathers. Corruption within the citadels of power spreads like ink in water. The manuscript evokes scenes of rule by spectacle, not substance, and authority built on bravado in place of earned respect. Those in positions of trust lose their humility, and the flow of genuine wisdom from one generation to the next withers. The ancient contract between elders and youth, teachers and seekers, unravels thread by slow thread. In such times, traditions risk hollowing out, becoming more performance than transmission of real insight. As this age unfolds, sacred knowledge, once meticulously guarded and passed down in ritual and story, drifts from people's hearts. The wisdom at the core of yoga, meditation, and ceremony scatters, grabbed at by commerce, diluted into trends, or misunderstood. Practices meant to open consciousness recede into background noise, their essence fading beneath layers of marketing and appropriation. The manuscript's grief is palpable for the forgetting of initiation, context, and depth. Ancient technologies for awakening, instead of catalyzing transformation, turn into decorations emptied of potency. In modern life, these prophecies cast long shadows. An explosion of mindfulness apps sits uneasily with rising anxiety, while spiritual customs morph into logos or hashtags stripped of meaning. Knowledge that once demanded commitment now floats easy, accessible yet often disengaged from its deeper currents. The manuscript points to this as a critical juncture, a moment when superficiality threatens to define the spiritual landscape, unless seekers return to deeper wells. Simultaneously, The manuscript traces the tide of collective unrest and inner turmoil. As the era advances, a kind of psychological fog thickens. People, pressed by uncertainty and barraged by relentless input, spiral into states of worry, anticipation, and numbness. Chronic anxiety, sleeplessness, and existential confusion mark both private confessions and public health crises. The manuscript's language, poetic but pointed, alludes to minds overrun by ceaseless waves of regret and dread. Around the globe, realities described by the manuscript surface in every report on mental unease, every testimonial of burnout or overwhelm. The shape of the world's troubles carves itself into the spaces of the psyche, creating echo chambers of fear and hypervigilance. The boundaries separating individual pain from systemic malaise blur. The wisdom keepers who inscribed the manuscript understood this. The time of turbulence demands new forms of resilience rooted in timeless insight. In the past, rituals, disciplines, and community anchored the anxious mind. The manuscript calls forth a new generation of practices to steady the heart amid storms. When certainty in external structures fails, an inward path begins to gleam with hidden invitation. The manuscript casts each crisis not as a closed door, but as a threshold. Even as truths are forgotten, greed ascends, and spiritual confusion reigns, the possibility opens for sovereign seekers to restore connection, root again in living wisdom, and pilot transformation from within. The return of deep listening, to self, to elders, to the world, becomes the axis around which renewal can slowly spiral. Within the Manuscript of Kalki, the concept of cosmic cycles provides a key to understanding both collapse and hope. The wheel of time, the Dharma chakra, moves without haste or pause, shifting from one era's lessons to the next. The ancient sages envisioned a universe where even decay holds the seed of resurgence. As Kali Yuga unfolds, its darkness signals not only loss, but the stirring of a hunger for what is real and inexhaustible. Central to the manuscript is the Prophecy of Kalki, the rising force symbolizing resolution, clarity, and realignment. Images of a radiant rider on a white horse, sword gleaming, fill myths and meditations alike. This avatar's role is not simply to appear in a blaze of glory, but to reinfuse spirit into a tired world, dissolve illusion, and reactivate the possibility of Dharma, the vision that all life is interconnected, that justice and compassion are more enduring than temporary confusion. The manuscript crafts the figure of Kalki as a living archetype that transcends the boundaries of epoch or personal narrative. Rather than an external redeemer who imposes salvation by force, this presence invites a collaboration, a partnership between destiny and human action. Below the tumult of collapsing systems, the possibility for alignment persists, drawing out acts of courage, integrity, and devotion from unexpected corners. In the wake of mounting suffering, voices emerge, sometimes soft, sometimes thunderous, speaking out for restoration. From protests to permaculture farms, meditation groups to grassroots organizers, the world pulses with experiments in reclaiming what was lost. Rituals once dormant arise anew, shaped for changed times, yet grounded in primordial wisdom. Compassionate action radiates like healing rain across scorched landscapes, whether in the form of regeneration, quietly tending to community wounds, or holding space for vulnerability and grief. The return of Kalki signals a revolution of perception as much as event. The Avatar's true arrival unfolds in the courage to question inherited scripts, to defy cynicism, and to choose consciousness over distraction. Each individual who turns from passive despair and answers this call, participates in accelerating the wheel's turn toward harmony. This is the unspoken mystery of the prophecy. The presence of Kalki is real wherever discernment, honesty, and altruism ignite, wherever hearts synchronize with higher rhythms, despite the world's apparent inertia. Across continents, small miracles flicker. The arrival of wisdom in new forms, the birth of compassion where division had grown roots, the birth of circles of trust in unlikely places. Satya Yuga's golden breath whispers through acts of forgiveness, ecological restoration, and spiritual rediscovery. Hope, surprisingly tenacious, weaves through the cracks of a fracturing age, gathering quiet momentum. In these expressions, the manuscript's promise ripples forward, mapping the next iteration of awakening already underway. The Manuscript of Kalki offers not an escape, but a compass forged in paradox. Each description of turmoil carries within it a technique for rekindling inner light amid collective dusk. Ancient lines reveal how the spiral of descent can transform into a path of ascent when seekers remember and restore living wisdom to its place of honor. Instead of passively awaiting change, one might rise each day as a kindler of sacred possibility, grounding action in timeless principles. A tapestry of practices is interwoven in the manuscript's counsel. Meditation becomes more than a prescription. It forms a lifeline to the deepest currents within, a shield for both clarity and compassion. Rituals, however humble, are envisioned as tuning forks, bringing scattered attention back into alignment with the cosmic field. The cultivation of gratitude, conscious eating, intentional speech, and service are each described as acts that shape the invisible architecture of destiny. This is a revolution carried out in the silent spaces, tending to land with respect, honoring elders, keeping faith with community, protecting slivers of the sacred in daily life. The manuscript emphasizes the importance of direct experience. It insists that each gesture of remembrance, each moment in which the seeker acts as if the Satya Yuga already lives within, anchors the potential for transformation on a scale unseen but immeasurably real. Discernment is another vital chord, where noise overwhelms and the line between truth and illusion blurs. The manuscript urges vigilant inquiry. Not all that dazzles is luminous. Not every authority channels wisdom. By cultivating a fierce interior clarity, each soul polishes an antenna for guidance that exceeds trends and propaganda. This discernment is earned, a fruit of practice and humility, growing stronger each time one resists the pull of false comfort or the lull of collective trance. Service to others emerges in the verses as a golden thread. No action is too small to tilt the balance toward renewal. Whether nurturing a child, restoring a riverbank, or simply holding open a door in times of strain, such gestures multiply, their force radiating in ways visible and unseen. The manuscript frames these acts as the actualization of Kalki's return, a living passage through which the cycle of decline slows and the roots of a new era grow deep. With each chapter, the manuscript rejects apathy. Even surrounded by fragmentation, every soul carries the potential to be a turning point. By choosing to remember, to embody Dharma, and to honor the spark of the eternal, humanity steps into its own prophecy, not as an audience to world events, but as artisans in shaping their course. Within the closing hymns of the Manuscript of Kalki, a profound invitation unfolds. The cyclic rhythm of eras suggests a movement that envelops both despair and awakening, shadow and light. Rather than a verdict on human nature, the text illuminates the possibility of rebirth, present not at some distant horizon, but near. waiting in the courage to live differently in each breath. The sages who inscribed the manuscript point to a presence blossoming in the heart's inner sanctum, assembled from the ashes of broken systems, old betrayals, and missed opportunities. The force known as Kalki rises wherever the longing for truth grows uncontainable, wherever individuals vow to embody the principles that once defined brighter ages. The energy for renewal gathers not from the expectation of rescue, but from deep acknowledgement of responsibility, reverence, and hope. Every moment spent in aligned action, whether tending to the earth, questioning received truths, sheltering the vulnerable, or awakening others, becomes a node in an ascending network of healing. Patterns laid down by the manuscript no longer serve as fate, but as material for creative realignment. Even when the external world speaks only of unraveling, small epiphanies accumulate. A child marvels at the persistence of a flower bursting through concrete. An elder shares a fragment of wisdom. A community weaves itself together despite hardship. The manuscript's quiet assurance strengthens in these refusals to abandon the search for meaning or to accept contraction as destiny. The fire at the world's core, surviving every cataclysm, ignites in each soul that chooses presence over distraction, generosity over grasping, courage over withdrawal. In naming the symptoms of the age, the manuscript does not brand humanity with guilt or hopelessness. It offers a lantern to anyone journeying through darkness, longing for orientation. Prophecy, in this vision, becomes not merely description, but a challenge shimmering with dignity. Will you step into remembrance? Will you reinstate the sacred amid the roar of forgetting? Are you willing to live, speak, and create as if the golden age is not a memory receding, but a pattern being revived? Signs of Satya Yuga's renewal can be glimpsed even now, in the reclamation of ancestral songs, in unheralded acts of justice, in bridges forged between fractured worlds, and in the daily decision to see the world not as a place of endings, but as a living question. Each heart that awakens to this orientation shifts the balance. Within these acts, prophecy breathes, not as a fixed future, but as a song continuing, quiet, resilient, and eternally available. The Manuscript of Kalki closes by dissolving the boundaries between epoch and individual spirit. In the furnace of the present, each soul becomes a participant in shaping the unbroken wheel. As the wheel turns, dawn stirs in the unseen. The future, uncertain, luminous, reads the pulse of courage, wisdom, and love resurgent. Through your willingness to remember, to give, and to transform, the ancient promise stirs again, preparing the threshold for another radiant beginning.